Pastor Mai, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Today it's all about Garff, the constituency of Garff. The general election, Daphne Caine topped the poll with 1,122 votes. Andrew Smith, 1,112 votes. So what's been happening in Garff? If you live in Garff, if you drive through Garff, and let's face it, a lot of people do drive through Garff every day, what are your thoughts on what affects the constituency? Lots of issues to talk about, and got lots of messages in. If you want to get in touch, call 66 13 68. Text 166 177, email studio@manxradio.com, or you can WhatsApp on 166 177 as well. So first of all, Faster Mike, good afternoon. Daphne Caine, Andrew Smith.
Faster Mike, Andy.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, so Andrew Smith, just tell me this. This is a message in from Jim. It's a question in. If there is a vote to permit Kroger to actually drill for gas off Mackald, how will you vote?
I've always supported Kroger because I think that there are definitely reserves out there from what the people tell me, and I believe that it will be a transition for us to move to greener energy policies, so I would support the Kroger field, yes.
Was that instinctive, or have you been persuaded one way or the other?
No, I think you find that I've mentioned that support right from before I was elected, and during the election campaign and since, so I've had meetings with people on both sides of the fence, and I just think it's the common sense thing to do. I think that, we're looking at this energy security, and I think that obviously the ideas that we've got regarding wind and other things are a little way off as yet. And I just think that will be a transition fuel towards greener policies, which I also try to support, as long as they're pragmatic and cost effective for the public.
Okay, Daphne Caine?
Well, we've already had the vote on this. Jodie Farragher brought a motion to stop all extraction of fossil fuels from our waters, hydrocarbons, and that vote, that did not win majority support, although I did support that, and the vote to permit the existing licence to progress and continue was supported by a majority vote. But I have also said several times in Tynwald, I don't think there's a government in the world that would walk away from the prospect of the income from hydrocarbon extraction, but I still feel it's very unlikely, and we await what the DOI and Chief Minister, this government, will determine is permitted for the licence, whether the company is permitted to go forward to drill for gas, or whether they're going to give up that licence.
Okay, this is quite a long one from Helen, who just said, I'd like to ask Garff MHKs what they think about the policy of having a head teacher for multiple primary schools. I have 3 children educated or being educated at Laxey. In their time, we've seen the appointment of a head from Doon who became executive head teacher. Now he's got responsibility for Williston, so he's in charge of 3 schools. Laxey has what they call a head of school who has a different role to the old head teacher appointment. The 3 schools for which our executive head has responsibility have different ethos, different expectations, and we rarely see the executive head from one term to another. It's a split up, so I'll just find from different term to another. Yes, Mackall, Laxey and Williston are very different areas, different demographics. I've witnessed dumbing down of my children's learning and more emphasis on collaborative, politically correct projects, says Helen, and initiatives. Do the Garff MHKs agree with this collaborative approach, or do they think executive head teachers are a way of DESC saving money? And what about opportunities for teacher career progression? Andrew Smith.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, I've got experience from my daughter when she was at Laxey School, and I felt that as a village school that had its own identity. It was unique. The teaching practices that I found under the headmasters and mistresses of the day were very good. I was a school governor, the first community governor on Laxey School at the time, and we tried to have that local integrated approach to education. So I am a little disappointed, I would suggest, with the DSC as to why they appear to go down this route, and how one person can, in fairness, I know that you explain that they do have what they call heads of the various schools, but to have one person to oversee, as the questioner says, that 3 schools as well as could be expected, I think that you would lose some of your identity. So I believe I would rather go back. And some people say, well, it's all right to say go back to the old days, but I would rather see Laxey School, Doon School and Williston as they had been previously, from my personal experience having children within Laxey School.
Is it just about money?
I don't know for sure. I don't believe that we've had, from my experience in Treasury during my time, we've not had any questions regarding funding vis-a-vis this particular route of headmasters and multiple schools. So I can't answer on behalf of DSE. That could be a case, but I would suggest that the pupil is the most important part of all this, and we need to ensure that our schools, especially when you think of Garff and its rural location and the types of families that live and come into those schools, then we should try to accommodate, and I believe, in a more holistic way for a village life.
Okay, Daphne, Caine?
I met with Max Kelly, the executive head teacher of the Federated Schools, just a week ago, and he tells me that it's working well. I felt that Williston seemed counterintuitive, and I would feel that the first step, where Doon and Laxey are only being 4 miles apart or whatever it is, that seemed to work quite well. The results that the school gets, the ethos of the school, that isn't what I'm getting contacted from constituents about. The things that are important generally surround access for special needs support, healthcare as well, mental health care particularly, road safety. They're the issues that are coming forward to me, not the matter generally of a head teacher, executive head across 3 schools. But I would think that that is the maximum, and I would agree that the head is then less present, obviously, in each of those schools, because you can't stretch yourself between the schools, especially when there's a greater distance. But that isn't something that's been raised with me as an issue. I think it worked well when it was Laxey and Doon. We'll see how it progresses with Williston, but it's not something that I enjoy seeing in terms of the direction of travel for the Department of Education. And I do think that some heads, teachers' career progression was better when they were quite often, Mr Jenkins from Bone School Ramsey, for instance, was head at the Doon before he moved on to a bigger school. So I haven't heard anything from the teachers either what they think of this, but it is essential that you have an excellent head of school who is the de facto head teacher for the school, whereas maybe the executive head is more of a financial and administrative.
Did the governors have any say in this? Governors of the schools?
I don't know, in fairness. Obviously, it's a long time since the governing bodies were formed, and I haven't been on there recently. We have a little interaction with governing bodies from Laxey School, but I'm not sure how much influence they actually have over this, the heads, etc.
I'm not aware if the governors take part in the interviewing now for each school either.
Okay, Roger's live. Hi, Roger, you're live with Daphne, Caine and Andrew Smith.
Hello, everybody. I just want to ask, particularly Andrew, because he is on the Capital Equipment Committee for Treasury, the rationale for the MU's solution to stop spewing sewage into Laxey Bay at Garwick and at the harbour. The solution that the MU have come up with is to actually, for the sewage to fall down into Laxey near the harbour in a holding tank, and then pump it uphill to a location where it will be treated, and the solid from that treatment will then be loaded into wagons and taken to Mary Veg for further treatment. Meanwhile, the effluent from the treatment plant above Laxey will be pumped down into Laxey Bay again. So we've still got effluent going into Laxey Bay. And I just cannot see the financial rationale for that proposal when it could be easily done by just pumping the sewage from the area to Onchan and into the Iris scheme, and that could be then treated at Mary Veg.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. Obviously, as you know, we've had long and detailed conversations about this over many, many years. And the MU, and you may disagree, that the MU have decided that they cannot pump away to Miriveg. Now, obviously, there'll be others that have the opposite argument, but all I can say is that they have convinced everyone. And as you'll know, at the moment, they've actually also, and I think the group that you're involved with may have also requested that the Auditor General becomes involved to check all the figures and calculations between the MU's policies and costs, and also other people's options. And they continue to argue the fact that they A, cannot pump to Miriveg, B, that the system cannot handle, the connection in Onken is both not suitable, and also it would be detrimental to the future development of Onken. Regarding if it came into a lower area within the central promenade area of Douglas, then we've also got to consider the expansion that we will be seeing very shortly on the upper part of Victoria Road, where we've got Summerhill View Nursing Home, and also the King Gaming Apartments, which all their effluent will then flow down onto the promenade. And I say, obviously, I've mentioned this both for many years before my election and since my election. I believe the best option would be to actually take a pipeline exactly from Laxey under the sea and connect that to either somewhere within Douglas on the promenade or all the way to Miriveg, because you would have a pipeline which has 120 year, a high density polyethylene pipeline which would have 120 years life at least. You'll be able to easily take everything, as you say, that flows naturally to the bottom of the hill in Laxey, pick up the Garwick outfall as it passes, also pick up Growler, which has issues of its own, and take the whole lot to Miriveg. But I've been argued that that cost is way beyond anyone's capabilities, so we have to now live with what MU at the moment are suggesting, together with what the Auditor General may come up, and he may have some kind of view on the scheme. But at the moment, that the current plan is, because of, and in fairness, I have to say this, that Manx Utilities did not do themselves any favours regarding the planning applications and the way that we went about the site of the Caine at the bottom of Laxey. But obviously the people were totally against that, so they are now trying to appease those people, and as a consequence of that, looking for alternative sites. I understand from MU that they probably had at least 50 site inspections around the area of Garff suitable for the pumping of sewage treatment and then the return of the flow naturally downhill back to treated effluent out into the bay. But again, we are subject to still those open negotiations with landowners looking for pumping sites, and that is their current plan and their current idea for the area.
Okay, final word, Roger.
Well, it's interesting that Andrew says that it's not possible to pump away direct from the Laxey Bay to Miriveg via Onken, because that was the original Irish scheme. And I cannot see why what was possible in the early 90s and into 2000 is not possible now. And secondly, he says that the MUA have convinced most people that what they say is correct. Have they convinced Andrew? And is the Auditor General going to look at this problem from a costing point of view? We don't know. We approached our group, Best for Laxey Bay, approached the Auditor General 2 or 3 months ago, and we've heard nothing. So perhaps, Andrew, you could fill me in on that.
Okay. Before I just go to Andrew, I've just got to read a complimentary, or something that fits in with this. It's an email in from Eric, who just said, could you ask the Garff MHKs if the MUA and the new chair, Tim Crookall, should say why they're reluctant to connect onto the Irish line at Onken? Perhaps they could say that the network in Douglas needs sorting out. South Douglas is pumped via Middle River Pipeline, which is as per the original design, leaving the prom pumps for North Douglas and Onken. A bit of honesty, says Eric, will go a long way to restoring public confidence. Then members could have a sensible debate and help the MUA get the work done sensibly and properly as originally designed. Ignoring the pipeline pump-away option at every avenue isn't helping the MUA gain trust with people who have some understanding of the situation. We need help and provide MUA with public support for this work, says Eric. Daphne, Daphne Caine?
I think one of the issues was that a key pumping station located in the Quarterbridge area was never installed. So the capability of the Onken and Douglas system is going to be overloaded because the top part of Onken and North Douglas can't go over down to the Quarterbridge pumping station and out. But I would say the part of this that gives me concern is the latest update from Manx Utilities on their website, which I think was posted on the 8th of September, where there's frequently asked questions as well as the fortnightly update, so we'll probably do another one anytime. They say that they're negotiating with various people in the area between Laxey and Baldrine and Axenfell for the pipeline routing for the pumping up of the effluent to the IRBC system there. But there are a number of frequently asked questions where they seem to be keeping open the option of returning to put an IRBC treatment works at the Cairn site and Garwick if those don't come to fruition. So I'm quite concerned at the minute. I think I'd absolutely support Roger and the best for Laxey Bay, that pump away through Onken to whichever route is the optimum, and I would suggest picking up from Groudle would improve matters considerably in Groudle Glen. But with that, the Manx Utilities, the environmental and ecological concerns of putting a pipeline round from Laxey, Baldrine and on to Douglas has been firmly battered away by Manx Utilities. So I don't think that is anywhere on the table.
Just industry jargon there, IRBC is?
It's the integrated rotational biocontactor system. It's a system of rotating cylinders that cleans the effluent to a certain degree before the remaining liquid is then returned.
And then obviously the clean effluent flows back out to wherever. Obviously in this case, it out to the bay through the system, and they've also got UV treat, to take all these other nasties out of it. And then what your solids are left with, then, as Roger rightly says, will be tankered away to Miriveg, as happens from various other similar sites around the island. But just to come back to Roger's point regarding the Auditor General, as far as I know, Roger, and this is my understanding, I'd like to think it's what his remit is, that he is totally independent and he will be looking at the figures in detail, both from the Best for Laxey Group and also from the MU. So if we can get some clarity from him, then it may bring a little more understanding for both Daphne and myself, as obviously deep in this issue, and various other members, as your other commenter rightly said, so that we can actually make an informed decision and get the right outcome. But what I think I don't think there's anybody on the island, and recognising that we've got the biosphere status, I don't think there's anybody on the island that would say that one day more of raw effluent flowing out into Laxey Bay is one day too much. And I have been involved in this since my time on the commissioners, when I first asked for primary screening in the mid-90s. That's 30 years ago.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Roger.
Thank you.
All right. Good to hear from you. Stephen's with us now. Hi, Stephen. You're live with Daphne and Andrew.
Good afternoon, Daphne and Andrew, and good afternoon, listeners.
Good afternoon, Stephen.
Could I ask, please, what will be your position on whether you will support the removal of work permit legislation, which is a major change to the whole island's attitude to employment legislation? If you do support it, what gives you the legitimacy to support this legislation? And if you don't, that's fine. You can also explain that. And how would you ensure that there's a quick response to any downturn in the labour market if that indeed happened and there was a problem for Manx/Indigenous Manx people? So those are my questions, please.
Daphne Caine?
Yes, I do support suspending the legislation. From my 5 years previously with the Department for Enterprise, there was a lot of frustration over the imposition and the extra barrier that our work permit legislation put in place for the number of people wanting to come to the island. It's sometimes a deterrent because it's an extra form to fill in, however smooth that process was made. The department is turning around 90+% of work permit applications in 24 to 48 hours. And it's a myth, it's a misapprehension that there is some form of police check or vetting of the people receiving those work permits. There is not. And when people have the requisite visas, which is also a barrier to a number of people coming here, they have the right to work in the UK, then they can come to the Isle of Man. So I absolutely support keeping it on our statute so that it can be reintroduced should it be required. But right now, the economic climate, the pressure at the our borders, I think the Chief Minister said that there were 900 people, new jobs on the Isle of Man this year so far, and several hundred are awaiting paperwork to be able to come here. So there is no useful purpose in having work permit legislation creating an extra barrier from getting the people that we do want to come here for the island's economic benefit.
Okay, Andrew Smith.
Yeah, I'm fully supportive of Daphne's comments there, and I would add that I can't see that it would be an issue for any Indigenous people, because I believe that it'll still be on the statute book, and if we need to review the situation as and when hopefully things get better regarding the workforce, then I think that'll be there. But just to give you a few issues here. The persons employed between quarter 2 22 to quarter 2 23, we've seen an increase of over 500. Work permit applications have been 1,282 this year to date. Private sector jobs have seen a 1% increase in the year between June 22 and June 23. And there have been 468 new applications approved for immigration. The jobs and numbers of people employed remains high. There's a slight dip in quarter 1 this year, but this does not seem to be an indicative of a trend for now. Total jobs and persons employed grew in the quarter 2, 22-23, and vacancies remain very high across all sectors, and demand for workers far outstrips the number of people available. You've only got to just talk it doesn't matter who you speak to, whether it's people in hospitality, restaurants, hotels, builders, construction industry, everyone is saying. And the thing is, what I've got to recognise, that this is not just the Isle of Man, this is not just the UK, this is Europe wide. So we're all looking for the same people. So I truly believe that for the moment in time, that we have to relax something to enable people, and there will be other checks and balances in place for these people. They can't just arrive here, do what they want, and there's no checks or balances on them. We've got to register for income tax, for national insurance, show all these various things, health services, and so I think that we just need to relax, see how we can try and invigorate the current situation that we're experiencing within our workforce.
Okay, Stephen.
Well, thank you for your replies. I'm still not quite happy with the legitimacy aspect. I hear what Daphne has said and Andrew has said about the buoyant market. However, I'm still not 100% sure that you've got the mandate to do such an important change. But thank you for your replies.
Okay, thanks for that, Stephen. Good to hear from you. We're live with Daphne Caine and Andrew Smith. The Garff MHKs through till 1. Text, email, call and WhatsApp.
At NFU Mutual in Douglas, we believe the best way to look after our customers is to be based close to them. And so, with an office at Key House on South Quay, our great service is always close to home. If you need car, home or business insurance, call in to see us at NFU Mutual for a friendly face-to-face chat. Call us on 674 191. That's 674 191. Or to visit our website, Google NFU Mutual Isle of Man.
For your new bathroom, head to Pacesetter, Harris Terrace, Douglas or Spring Valley. In Pacesetter's fully fitted showroom, you'll find the latest bathroom products and designs, from new contemporary styles to traditional Victorian tiles, wall and ceiling panels, accessories and much more. With many ranges exclusive to Pacesetters, plus professional design advice from the experts, visit Pacesetter, Harris Terrace, Douglas or Spring Valley.
You can get the best of everything, where the price is twice as nice.
TGI Fridays, Harry Ramsden's, Greg's, Chiquito. They're each loved for food and enjoyment. And now they've all teamed up with Iceland to bring their famous food direct to you. Piccolino, My Protein and many more, all in one place. ShopRite. So anytime you're craving for what makes them famous, we can help. No defrost, no prep, no waste. Straight from the freezer into the oven. And all at great prices. New exclusive brands. Only at ShopRite. Proudly locally owned.
The Ramsey Garden Centre sale is now on, featuring a huge range of garden items at vastly reduced prices. Don't delay. Grab a garden bargain now. There has never been a better time to visit Ramsey Garden Centre. Open 7 days a week on Albert Road, Ramsey.
Guild 2, Guild J as Guild Sarah.
Avicen
A Gilg, the Manx Gaelic, Ginian Amera, the mother tongue of Elian Mannin, the Isle of Man.
Avicen
You can catch up with more of Manx Radio's Manx language programmes in the weekly podcast Abershen Rish. Say that again.
Avicen
Shene, that's the one.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
And Daphne Caine and Andrew Smith and Charlie's with us. Hi, Charlie.
Hi. Did I hear Andrew say one of the arguments against putting Iris into Douglas was the complex at the top of Victoria Road?
Complex where? Top of Summerhill?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. The Summerhill View nursing home will be handed over hopefully in December. And obviously that I think it's about 70 bed occupancy. And then so obviously all that effluent, we were talking about sewage at the time, weren't we? So I was just explaining that all that effluent will be flowing. There's only one way downhill, and it's coming down Victoria Road, as will the King Gaming Building when those, I think it's 40 odd apartments are built. So all I was trying to explain was the pressure, the existing pressure, and then increasing capacity required regarding the obviously down on the promenade in Laxey regarding the sewage that's moving, in Douglas Central Promenade especially, that's picking up all that sewage running through to Miriveg.
How many occupants were there in Glenside?
How many occupants in Glenside? That's a good question. I can't remember. I remember Glenside.
When it was in full, there must have been 60 or 70 people there, so it's not going to make much difference, really, is it?
Well, all I'm saying, but I think we've had, obviously, I think the pipe was different I don't know whether the pipe was different. I think, if I remember rightly, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the Glenside was scaling down and due to close before all the pipe work had been put into. Now, you may say that they were short-sighted because they didn't think of any further capacity, but I think since the promenade works regarding the sewage, I think you find there was a scaling down and a reduction within the Glenside at that stage. So, but obviously, what you will also recognise is in building techniques nowadays, vis-a-vis Glenside, you've got more. There's more water capacity, more showering, more en suites, etc., etc. So you are looking at increased capacities regarding wastewater and effluent.
Well, wastewater. If there was 60 or 70 residents in Glenside, there's not going to be an increase in water or sewage. You've still got roughly the same capacity.
Okay, so Charlie, what do you think should happen?
Well, it should be pumped round from around the coast and connected.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that, Charlie. We're back to sewage again, but I want to go on to properties in Garff. Richard said all over Garff we have dozens of properties which are occupied but have been allowed to fall into complete disrepair, affecting the value of neighbouring houses. Andrew knows, as a former commissioner for Garff, commissioners have the power to address houses which are in an appalling state with rubbish and abandoned vehicles stacked high for everybody to see. We have to paint our house white or magnolia, but down the road there's a house covered in peeling paint and black mould with plaster falling off, but that seems to be okay and nothing's done. As the commissioners know about these houses but nothing's happened, isn't it time dilapidated houses are dealt with legally by the DOI, as for 20 years they've done nothing about any of them, especially when they're fully aware of each one, Andrew?
Yeah, I fully agree. And what we're trying to do is, you may have heard in recent days that we were trying to look at adjusting the rate system to bring in additional rates, penalties for people that leave these properties abandoned. I can again speak from experience in my days on the commissioners, and there has been a property on the new road in Laxey which has never ever been occupied since I've been here. And there's the odd person that comes every now and again to make it look as though something's happening, and nothing has happened to that property, and that's right in the centre of the village. Now, I know it's in a commercial area, so it doesn't impact the same as for your good self, because it's in a neighbourhood, but we need to really grapple with this situation, and I think it may well be that the deterrent, it must be through the rateable system. Now, you may say, well, if it's an errant owner, then he won't pay the additional rates, or he won't pay the additional surcharge, but what we do is that we would then put a charge on the house, so that as and when it was eventually sold, we would then be able to reclaim. Now, I know it may not be the most satisfactory situation, but I think we need to address this through the rate system, so that we actually make a penalty for people that leave houses. What I can say regarding when people do step up to the plate and try to renovate these derelict properties, that it is not the easiest thing to do, especially if they've been lying for many years and no roof on and things like that, and trying to bring them up to latest standards. So we've got to look at there's a balance between looking how we can try to bring these, and we need these properties, because if all these properties are lying like this on the Isle of Man, we would not have such a critical housing situation as we have currently. So I think we've got to encourage people, and if that means by veiled threat, as it were, through the rate system, then I think that's what we have to do, and hopefully that will then appease the situation.
Daphne, Caine, can we sanction the owners of houses?
There are powers for them. You may be interested in a written question, which I certainly am awaiting the response with interest. Mr. Speaker, Ewan Watterson has a question on the for written answer on the 3rd October, asking how many times in each of the last 3 years environmental health officers have assisted a local authority in serving a notice on the owner of a dilapidated building, and whether officers have received any feedback from local authorities as to why their powers are not used more frequently. So I'm certainly awaiting that answer. And I note there's Rob Callister was requesting an update from the Housing and Communities Board on the work of the board to address the matter of dilapidated properties, but there's no answer there for that one yet either. So it is sporadic issue, but there are a few, which we're all aware of, yes, who are consistently in a poor state. So I suppose it's a matter for bringing them to the attention of the commissioners and between the local authorities and the departments responsible for supporting them to take action, because I agree it's inconsiderate to the neighbours and does have a detrimental effect on the area.
And I think also that in fairness to commissioners, I know Garff commissioners have been very active in some of these things, but it may seem that they feel that they're walking in trickle a bit, so that somewhere in the system there is this barrier between the commissioners and councils generally being able to act and the central government authorities being able to support them in that action, and there just seems to be some dichotomy there.
Okay, Julian, you're live with Daphne and Andrew.
Hi, Andy, and hello, Daphne and Andrew.
Hi, Julian.
Hi, Julian.
Hiya. I have a question about the pumping facility for the sewage at Garff, but I just need 30 seconds to put my question into context. At last week's government conference, the head of the energy transition made some assertions about large amounts of yearly electricity being produced onshore here at either Eriestone or Druridale. It turns out the figures touted at the conference are based on models and an experimental 5-turbine wind farm located 18 miles east of Scotland in the North Sea called Hywind, high spelled with a Y, which cost an eye-watering £264 million, which can't really be compared to a field above Colby or Ballaugh. So, Daphne, does this give you any concern about the wildly optimistic figures being touted by the MUA at the moment? If, for example, what contingency plans are in place to pump the sewage at the new Laxey sewage facility or others in the event that we do have future electrical blackouts if it turns out these wind farms are going to produce about a quarter of what we need?
My understanding, I attended the Manx Utilities briefing at the government conference, found it extremely interesting, although equally I have some number of questions which I'll be taking up with them. The issue of the security, our energy security, was addressed, and I think it was made plain that the second interconnector is, as well as the existing one, is what provides energy security to the island, and a second interconnector also enables greater use of onshore renewables. The current one, the current plans for the wind farm at either in Druiddale and Solby or Eristane and Skird, I believe that can already be accommodated with the existing interconnector without causing any instability. And the Isle of Man has an enviable record of no blackouts for well over, I think it's 2 decades. So the Isle of Man has a very good record, and they will be doing everything they can to ensure that continues. So the renewables, in terms of I don't think whichever system, the whole island, not just Garff's proposed sewage scheme, but the whole island, the whole of Port St Mary and Port Erin have pump away to Mary Veg. And I think the issue for Garff is more, why should we accept a system that's considered not as good as the aerated sludge system, the old-fashioned system that was put in place at Mary Veg, when there is apparently capacity to take the sewage from Garff there. And I think it was a 2006 document, findings were the conclusion that Laxey was not suitable to have sewage works within the area, and it should be pumped away to Mary Veg. So for me, the question isn't about the security of the island's power. I think there'd be a lot of issues all over the island if the power was off because it wasn't provided. And I one thing I do believe in the programme lead who was talking about the renewable provision is that they are carefully evaluating every aspect of what is the best mix of energy for the Isle of Man with our wind and natural resources.
Okay, Julian?
Yeah, I do agree with you. She did say that 20 years our gas turbine has produced the most reliable electrical generation in Europe, which is saying something quite good about fossil fuels, inadvertently, I suppose. And as you say, there would be other problems, like all the water pumps would go off in the event of, if we had a problem in the future, heating, communication, especially if we're going to fibre. My last question then is, the ARRET report, the Future Energy Scenario report that the Isle of Man government commissioned, said that the cheapest scenario one option for an interconnector with all the substations and everything was £585 million in 2019 money. Where's that almost 600 million and maybe more with inflation going to come from to pay for the interconnectors?
Okay, just this question briefly, if you
yeah,
would.
Well, on the Future Energy Scenarios document described 4 options, and a second interconnector was bringing the cheapest energy to the Isle of Man. But the energy trilemma is to achieve energy generation for the Isle of Man that balances the security aspect, the cost, as well as security. The point about the gas-fired power station is that actually it was switched off for 6 months 2 years ago for maintenance, repairs, recommissioning, and we survived perfectly well through the interconnector and nobody noticed. So we've got a dip in our emissions as a result of that as well. So there are the Energy Scenarios document highlighted various mixes that we might consider, but some of them are massively more costly than others. But even recommissioning a power station to run on whichever fuel, if that was part of the mix to provide baseload, there would be a significant tens of millions, hundreds of millions cost to recommission the power station.
Okay, all right, let's move on. Thank you for that, Julian. We're back with Daphne, Caine and Andrew Smith in a moment.
Sitting on a beautiful sunlit terrace with views over the sea, savouring exquisite Mediterranean food. It's the holiday experience we all dream of, and you don't even need to leave the island to enjoy it. Leonardo's in Castletown brings you authentic flavours, now including handmade pizza in a welcoming Mediterranean atmosphere. Open Tuesday to Sunday, noon till 3 and 6 till 8. Taste the Mediterranean at Leonardo's in Castle Street. Search them on Facebook.
I began to struggle with the stairs, but I didn't want to leave our family home. So my daughter told me about Acorn stair lifts and their new showroom in Douglas. I was able to try the stair lifts and find the right one for me and the home I love. They were so friendly. The whole process was hassle-free and they offered the whole package from installation to servicing. Choose the island's first choice for stair lifts. Acorn Stair Lifts, South Quay, Douglas.
Call Acorn Stair Lifts now on 672 414 or call into our Douglas showroom.
Book now for Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat at the Gaiety Theatre from October the 8th to the 14th. With a cast of local favourite stars, this feel-good, joyous musical is suitable for the whole family. Packed with fun, uplifting songs and dances, with hundreds of beautiful costumes, and many of the island's most talented trained children. Don't miss the Christine Wilde Theatre School and Rachel Wilde Performers Studios Joseph at the Gaiety Theatre this October.
Get ready for another winning weekend on Manx Radio.
And this weekend you can win a set of motorbike tyres up to the value of £250 from H&H Motorcycles, the one-stop source for everything bike at hnhmotorcycles.im.
Visit manxradio.com and answer the competition question for your chance to win. You can enter as many times as you like.
Then make sure you're listening to Manx Radio Breakfast on Monday morning when we'll be announcing the winner.
Make this your winning weekend with your nation station, Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
With Daphne Caine and Andrew Smith, the Garff MHKs. We'll come to floods in just a moment. I just want Eddie to pose his question first. Eddie, you're on live.
Thank you. Both your MHKs said they want to relax the work permit. And yet Andrew went and said that 90% of all work permits were being dealt with within 24 hours. Now, as a Manxman, I would like them to say, are they going to represent the Manx people and ask Europe to relax their work permits so that Manx people could work in Europe without having a work permit?
Okay, Andrew Smith?
Well, that's certainly a thought. I mean, I can obviously look in if that needs investigating. Are you telling me that there is a barrier to Manx people working in Europe?
Yes, there is.
Is that for the people that have got a Manx passport, or
no? That's because they're Manx born.
Manx born, right? Okay. Well, there's no reason why I can't. Actually, I'm happy to look at that. What we could achieve by the Isle of Man speaking to someone at European level, I don't know for sure, but we do have interaction at that level. So I will take up your challenge if you wish, and I will try and see what we can do there.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Eddie. It's good to hear, and thanks for hanging on for an awful long time. My inability, says DC on 835, my inability to obtain full buildings insurance cover on my property in Glen Road, which was flooded in 2019. Incidentally, I hold the government partly responsible for this. What's the situation, Andrew Smith?
Yeah, well, it's as we rightly know, it's coming up 4 years now, and the issue we've got is that everyone on the Glen Road had obviously some devastating flooding within their properties as a consequence of that event. And as to responsibility, then yes, that's an argument for. Well, we wouldn't have enough time on this programme at the moment, but that's an argument for another day. And that is still ongoing. I'm still giving evidence to the investigators that are looking into that event. But regarding the insurance, as you know, that there are works have been going on in the river since that time and are still ongoing. We're only able to go in the river at certain times of the year because of DEFRA's policies on wildlife and fishes, etc. And the current works have got to be finished by the end. They've got to be out of the river by the end of September. What I'm hoping is that when those current works are finished, then all the properties along the Glen Road, from Victoria Terrace, the Wooler Mills, right down to Swales Bridge and beyond, have been suitably protected against future flooding, and all the risks are therefore mitigated. We've been in a situation in the interim whilst I've been speaking to local insurers, local brokers, off-island insurers, in that they are saying that until the scheme is completed completed to their satisfaction, they can't really look to review what the insurance practicalities are. So it's very similar to having a car accident and only having half the repair completed. They will not consider it and pay anything out or address the situation until it's actually the works are completed. So I am hopeful. I'd like to think I could give an ultimate guaranteed promise, but I am hopeful that if these works, as they tell me, that will be finishing at the end of this week, have now protected all those properties affected to the necessary levels, then I can then take my conversation to the next level and start to challenge the insurances, the assessors and the underwriters as to why we can no longer get back to some sense of normality regarding not only buildings cover, flood cover, but actual levels of premium, because they've also been hiked dramatically.
OK, this is a question now. This is for Daphne Caine, who just says, Mrs. Caine's got a background in tourism, a long time ago, wasn't there? So I just wonder what Mrs. Caine's opinion is of the importance of the MER, which runs through a lot of Garff.
I was taking a ride on the electric tram only Sunday. I think it's hugely important, and I am awaiting the report of the review of railways that was commissioned between Caine and the Department of Infrastructure while Mr. Thomas was minister there. I did have a very brief input into the consultants' session when they came over and spoke to various heritage rail groups and interested parties. I just think it's critical if we are expecting to expand our tourism offering to attract 500,000 visitors a year from the current 300,000, that we have a means of transporting them around the island that doesn't just rely on the motor car or other vehicles. So, no, I think that the electric tram is more significant in a way than the steam because it's more unusual, especially the Isle of Man has this unique variety of railways within our offering, from the mountain railway, the electric and the horse tram, as well as steam. But for great parts of Garff, through Groudle and through Maccled, the electric tram is the public transport because the bus routes don't go there.
Is Visit Isle of Man's job more difficult without having a tourism minister, do you think?
I'm aware that there was a move in at the start of this administration to establish a board that comprised tourism, leisure, railways, I believe, but that wasn't progressed with when the Climate Board and the Housing and Communities Board were appointed. So whether this report is seeking evidence perhaps to lead to that kind of arm's length operation for the tourism and leisure and heritage offering that's currently under various government departments, I don't know. I'm not in the Chief Minister's confidence, but I'm hopeful that the report will reflect the huge importance of the railways in their current network with and completing hopefully the reinstallation of the horse tram line, but also not seek to break them up, reduce them in any way, but actually to celebrate them. I think we've got railways that would put us on the map, as the antiques expert said who visited in the summer, as World Heritage status. There is nowhere the Isle of Man is unique and special.
Andrew Smith?
I think, it does attract a lot of people to the Isle of Man, and obviously being in Laxey, you see how busy the station is, and it's the only way to get to Snaefell. As Daphne rightly says, it's the only public transport through Doon, Ballaglass and the other parts of Maccled. But in fairness, I think we've got to demonstrate, if we want to keep these things, we have to demonstrate that we're using them. And I'm still not convinced that it's used to its full capacity.
I hear that the passengers are maybe 20% up this year. They've certainly seemed thronging with people, and the Heritage Rail celebratory anniversary events this year have been really well attended and well received.
But I think there are obviously the special events possibly, but then you will see times when you run in a tram and probably you'd say the similar things to buses and there's only 2 or 3 people on it. So I think if we really want to keep it as well, we have all got to stand up and be counted and actually utilise it.
Okay, a question for Andrew Smith. It is I don't know how much industry knowledge you've got to this, but about, is it called this hydrogenated or this new type of diesel that's coming out, this kind of green diesel?
Green diesel, I mean, obviously we brought in biodiesel a number of years ago now.
Is it true you used to recycle chip fat?
Yes, recycle cooking oil, yes. dirty, all the dirty, and everything that you get in it, as you can imagine, when it comes out of the filthy fryers. That obviously these things, I think it's a bit too disgusting to talk about at lunchtime for your listeners. But yes, we did. It was the dirty end of the game.
And
But it was truly.
When did you do that?
That was back 2006. And sadly, we had to end that operation because the raw product just dried up, because various other people could see the opportunity for their own vehicles,
Right.
and therefore our source of supply dried up. But yeah, that was a cleaner option. But I'm not sure. I don't know enough about this hydrogenated diesel yet. But yes, we've got bioethanol for petrol engines. But yes, there's. I think again, although we're looking to move to green energy and wind and hydrogen and things like that, I think we have to recognise that diesel engines and diesel vehicles will be with us for a little while longer. So if we can get these ultra low sulphur diesel engines to be more efficient, then I think as an interim measure, that's what we've got to have to gain.
Well, as somebody who's in the trade, how long do you think diesel engines are going to be around? 10, 20 years?
Well, I've got a car that's already. Yeah, my car will go another 30 years easily, but that's not to say it would be allowed to go another 30 years. But diesel engines will. Well, that's what they're made for. Diesel engines will run 24/7. You don't need with very little maintenance, because they've got far less moving parts than a petrol engine.
Okay.
But it would be better not to have the emissions from diesel, and I'm celebrating the fact that Nissan has announced it's going to go all electric production of electric vehicles in Europe by 2030, and I think the Alaman should stick to its guns and go ahead with the ban on fossil fuel cars by 2030 as stated, but we'll await the government announcement on that.
We got through about a quarter of the questions, so would you both come back in the new year?
Be happy to.
Fine. No problem.
Good to hear from you. Andrew Smith and Daphne Caine, the Garff MHKs, were open line tomorrow, and thanks to Chris Quirk on the phones today.
WINT.
In our quest to remove